has struggled to keep those buildings in as good a shape as they are. And it's hard. It's hard when Casablanca had to go. It's hard that the lighthouse is not open. All those are hard places. But Cape Lookout pushes to get what they can in resources to keep up those structures. Part of this process was encouraged by what happened at Portsmouth after Dorian. And if you remember after Dorian, I think Jeff told me there was, when the officials came and there was like 11 houses that were, nine that were going to have to be destroyed, he said, no, we're going to be creative, we're going to stretch what we've got, we're going to work it, and we're going to save those buildings as much as possible. So there were compromises made, and there were priorities set as to what happened. At Cape Lookout, we're safer over there. Yes, the ground's a little bit higher, but the right storm coming from the right direction could put a lot of salt water in that village. So tonight is about us, the community, the people who love the Cape the best, for all the right reasons, where our priorities are. You know, where are you willing to compromise, and how are you willing to compromise that the community would be satisfied with what the Park Service would have to do with very limited funds, because you know it's going to be limited. So we're going to talk about the love we have for Cape Lookout. We're going to talk about a little bit about the stories. It's good just to see a bunch of you people here. I'm especially happy always to see Dr. Barton, the second Dr. Barton. And we all know what Dr. Barton's house means to that place. So you know, people have come to talk about the structures, the stories that went with it, and what the future will look like. So Jeff's going to talk, and then we're going to go through a PowerPoint of the buildings as they are now. And a lot of people, it's been a long time since you've been over there, so they've changed. There's been compromises already. And I have just have you know, David's camp doesn't look like David's camp anymore, so don't be upset. I've said enough about it. So, but let's see what we've got and offer positive conversation and given the group from NC State who's really done the work, Jeff's done a lot of talking, and help set our priorities in place. So, Jeff can introduce Erin.
I had to donate $150 to the museum for Karen to say anything positive about the National Park Service, which I know. So, you know, a couple of things. The reason that I want this to happen tonight, you know, many of y'all have been through lots of stuff, seen lots of changes over there at the Cape, and nothing has been easy. I'll bleed just a little bit here real quick, and that is the Park Service didn't do the right thing the right way, historically. I wasn't here, can't help it. So I just want y'all to know that if anybody's got a gun on them tonight. Well, absolutely. There were bad things that happened. That's not happening now. I care very much by law, policy, and my own feeling, my caring. I want to take care of not only the place over there, the natural thing, but the culture, the history, and the historic structures that are over there now. I want to provide for people to go over there, see, and use them. And it is hard. I got 64, give or take, historic structures left over there, and that covers everything from well houses and cool houses to, you know, 2-story big buildings. When I got here, we had a lot of structures that were in bad shape. That's on the NPS. We should have been taking better care of them. At the same time, that's easy for me to say because I don't know what kind of budget struggles they were having then. But when you got a tiny pot of money to go to and a whole bunch of, think how much it cost me to take care of my house. I had 64 of them that are a whole lot of, my house was built in 1940. Those structures over there, most of them are a lot older than that. So it is not easy. They are in a tough environment. And you guys know at least as well as me, and most of you a lot better, how they used to have to do things. If the structure was damaged too bad, what would they do with those materials? They used them on somebody else's house that was still standing, just needed something. I mean, they were smart about the way they did things. And they did them on a shoestring too. They didn't have a lot of money to put into them, but it was still hard. It was still a struggle, but people were there. Oh, yeah, it's still there, sorry. You know, it's like any structure that's doesn't have somebody living in it. I mean, a house, a building, when somebody's living in it, it has life to it. And you see where it's bleeding and you fix it. It's part of your family, part of your life. Things don't go astray. If they do, well, I know how it used to be. I had this to-do list that was pretty long. It's not the way it is over there. We've done some things that I think are better. We've got a historic preservation shop now. Many of y'all know John Riggs. He's a great carpenter. You betcha. And John has the historic windows over there at Keeper's Quarters. Karen yelled at me when I talk too much. The historic buildings over there at Keeper's Quarters, the windows on those, when we replaced those in 2015, $4,000 a piece to have a historic preservation shop build those things. John is building those same windows now for $400. He's doing it out of materials that will last. He's painting them and treating them in ways that he understands are going to make them last. And we got the Historic Preservation Office, State Historic Preservation Office, to buy off on all that. So we're not doing it under the counter or anything like that. We're making the right thing happen with the right materials so they'll last. Won't last forever. They still need maintenance. Right now, we do have a historic preservation crew. We got that because of a very generous donor who donated a bunch of money because he really liked what we were doing with the historic structures over there. And we've been able to maintain that crew now for several years. We're trying. But I need to know how y'all feel about stuff. Lots of things float around. Well, you ought to elevate those things. Well, in Portsmouth, that's all great, fair, and well, but what happens when people have to wade through there to get to a building? Are they really going to do that? Is it going to make any difference that we have spent literally, you know how much it costs to raise a house here on Harvard's Island? It costs more out there. I mean, just to begin with. So are we going to invest that money on raising houses? Or are we going to invest that money on roofs? On keeping the skins on those houses intact so they don't deteriorate. Those are all the things that we're working on. And I just want to say a few words about the lighthouse because I know I'll have 37 questions about this before I try to walk out of here tonight. So the lighthouse right now, we have secured funding for the lighthouse, the last final straws. They should award the contract for the lighthouse sometime in the next, I thought it was going to be by now, but there are a lot of things that have been slowed down on contract awards, but sometime in the next 30 days. It is important for us to get to work on the lighthouse. We originally put in for funding for the lighthouse in 2010. That was 15 years ago. I'll do the math in a second. And the lighthouse didn't stop deteriorating because we put in for the funding. We didn't get it until 2017. And then, they had to update all the old studies to make sure they were still accurate, document everything. But we're there right now. Everything's ready to go. All we got to do is get it awarded. And when that happens, before too long, it'll look like Hatteras. Have scaffolding around it and everything, and work will be underway. The beach, we did the re-nourishment of the beach over there in front. That is not something the National Park Service likes to do. Anytime we do something that is outside, it's a man-made process, we know it's not going to last, because they never do. Broke away to hold the beach in this time. They thought we'd lose a lot more of it than we've lost. We've lost 450 cubic yards since that beach was renourished. That is just a tiny piece of what they thought we'd lose. So we're good right now. We've got a little bit of time, and when all the current studies are done over there, we'll kind of know where to put what we need to put, and when we need to put it to help preserve that beach over there. It's the dream. Okay, I know I've said enough now. Erin Seekamp, Dr. Seekamp, has been instrumental in a couple of things. So one of the things that she wants to do, let me back up a little bit. So science, you know, I can tell people, I have been through those, I crawled underneath them, through the windows, around the doors, through the holes in the buildings, through the attics, on the roofs. I have been all over those things. I feel like I have an understanding of what needs to be done for each and every one of those buildings over there. That doesn't matter to the rest of the world and the National Park Service when it comes to funding. We have to have a scientific foundation for what we do and when we do it too. And Dr. Seekamp has come up with a methodology that makes a lot of people really happy in the National Park Service. And it's good, but a piece of it that we are trying to capture now is y'all's input to it. If you don't have people who care, the community's input to this, you're missing a big thing. Y'all are the ones with a vested interest in seeing how we do this, what we do, moving buildings, not moving buildings, doing it the way it was always done. If they, you know, if a storm takes them out, a storm takes them out, or alive. Or do we elevate them? Or do we move them? Do we sell them? All those things need to be answered, and y'all can help us do that. And it's one of the reasons that we were sure hoping to get a lot of good conversations going tonight. And with that, Erin, I'll shut up.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks you all for being here tonight. I really appreciate seeing so many people. I think that you've made Karen really happy to see so many community members come out to talk about a place that I know is really special to her, but obviously it's really special to you too. So we're going to be talking about Cape Lookout Village today. And I just want to acknowledge Dr. Zhao Zhao, who started working with me on this project in 2018, I believe, as a postdoc, and now she's a professor at Arizona State University, but she continues to work with me. And Peja Lee, who's a master's student working with me at North Carolina State University. And so I'm going to ask them to pass out, and unfortunately not everybody's going to get a copy. We exceeded our expectations, but we can get more made if you want one. But we have a map and then a sheet with information about each house. And so what we really want to spend some time tonight doing is going back to the village and hearing about your connections to these places, to your stories about the different buildings. Karen's been asking folks to help us remember who was in which house. It's not well documented. I mean, it's kind of there, but it's not really clear. So we're trying to clear some of that up. But again, what Jeff was referring to, a lot of decisions historically have been made about somebody's pet project. They really like that building, right? Or, well, the last person invested in that building, so it's in good shape. We should just keep investing in that one. But what we want to make sure is that the investments that are being made into the future reflect the values that you hold for these places, what you think is special. It is going to be very challenging to retain everything the way it looks like today, right, into the future. We see what storms have done and will continue to do. But how can we help inform the Park Service using a lot of math, right? But we don't have to talk about that math. We want to talk about your values. And so we can bring what you share with us tonight into those decision models that the Park Service likes to have. And this is something that hasn't been done with historic buildings in the past. And so the Park Service is really interested in seeing if this could be replicated elsewhere too. And so what we want to do is take a step back. There's going to be pictures from the past, essentially the past decade. Not every building is perfectly aligned, but started working on this project about 10 years ago, and then we went to another park to test it. Now we've come back to think more because Hurricane Dorian and Florence happened after the last time we were here. Things have changed, and we really think that that's a moment that can help us understand better your perceptions of what should be happening out there. And so then we'll end with talking about the future. So when we go through this look back to Cape Lookout Village in the last decade, I want you to go further back and think about your early memories out at Cape Lookout Village. And when you're ready to share something, just raise your hand and we'll get this mic to you and you can share it. One of the things that Karen's most excited about is that the museum's recording this. And so some of this will be able to get into their archives, the stories that you have of this place. And it's really important that it pertains here in the museum and not with me at NC State, right? Because what good would it do there? So we're going to start at the light station. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the keeper's dwelling and the summer kitchen. So who'd like to talk and share a story about the keeper's dwelling? And we also want to just make some notes is at the very bottom here. This is explaining the work that's been done in the past 10 years that Jeff has performed to these buildings. And it may even have a statement about where it's going. So, you know, it's a visitor center, it's open to the public, and it's supposed to get a new roof soon. Anyone have a story that they want to share about going out to the Cape Lookout Lighthouse area?
When I was young, right between that building and the lighthouse, we had our ball field there. For which day we were there all the time. And my grandmama's house, although it's not on this page, but it's right there close to that station place. My daddy was born, my daddy was 12 years old before they ever moved back to the island. And they lived there in the 1800s. But anyway, but we played, the boys and the girls, we'd go across sometimes on the maple boat just to get over there to stay, or if it was just an all-day thing. Sometimes we stayed in the old Coca-Cola house. Benny Brooks and Michael Ardell, they were kind of caretakers of it. So we would stay in the Coca-Cola house and just have fun and go swimming and almost got drowned at one time up there behind the lighthouse. And Ray Brooks saved my life. I was, yeah, I've done that many times. They would let us go up there anytime we wanted to. And we used to see how we could race it down. And my great-great-grandfather was one of the first lighthouse keepers. That he was a waiter. Josephus Willis said he was a waiter, and he would get the oil and he would tote it from that building up that lighthouse every night. The light was the first light was the whale oil.
Can you tell me your name?
Emma Rose Guthrie.
So nice. Thank you so much for sharing. Would anyone else like to share a story about this particular building? And do please tell us your name.
My name is Johnny Van Willis. My granddaddy, Isaac Van Willis. Him and his family lived over there. He'd taken care of the lighthouse, keeping the light going. I reckon there ain't a square piece of land there at my foot, not been on that from there to the Beaufort Bar. I run every horse out in the woods. I can only say it was like Hunt Finn to me. I was free. I could do anything I wanted to. Felt like it. Don't feel like it now, but we had the Bryant family house there. We went to the Phelpses, and of course my wife passed away 5 years ago. But she was the heir to it. And, we had about 48 years over there. But anyway, it was a hurt that was taken away. But we'll wait and see what else, as far as tonight, as far as what we're going to do. And after we listen to you and your small people speak. But I'm glad I'm here.
We thank you for being here. I'm going to go move to the next structure and feel free to just raise your hand. We can go back to, oh, we've got somebody already. Okay.
It's gonna be hard for me to do this, I guess. I probably am the only person in here that their parents was born last century at Cape Lookout. My father was there, was born Christmas Eve. And there was went to the 1984. So, I mean, 1894. So there's history there. We used to go with him in the boat, or he'd take us out, put us out on the shore, and he'd do his thing and fishing, and we went there with kids. And I had to do a special thought. 1958, in top of the lighthouse. Coast Guard boys were over there, we was turning the girls' heads. And we were all just up on the top. And this one of the guys that was the Coast Guard, he introduced himself to her, and he asked her for a date. They got married the next October. So there's a lot of stories in that lighthouse. But I'm real proud to be a part of it.
Thank you, Rose Griffin, for sharing that. So at the Cape Lookout Light Station Summer Kitchen, anybody have a special memory they want to share about this building? What?
I used to eat there.
You used to eat there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was the food good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were always running it down to the Coast Guard, to the Coast Guard station, and, we used to go around right after lunchtime, because we were young then, 13, maybe 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever it is we were. And we knew whatever they had left over from lunch, they were going to save it for us. And they did, and it was delicious.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing. Okay, this is probably, that's in the back. And thank you, Jeff, for waving me down.
I'll try to make this brief. I ran the ferry, the Diamond City from Arkansas over to Cape Lookout from 1975 to 1977. In that structure there, we set up a 16 millimeter projector and had a drive-in movie on the side of the lighthouse keeper's house. So, but the thing I want to add, piling on Jeff, in September 1977, the Corps of Engineers came through and was dredging the Barnes Inlet, and they ran out of money. I later ran onto the Corps of engineer that was on the project, and instead of taking dredging the channel so that it came in the sandbar protected, took the energy over for Shackford. They ran out of money, and they dredged the channel straight through it, and it was like putting a fire hose on the beach where the jet was filled in. We were losing 3 or 4 feet a day in there. A dock fell down, came back and took that structure out. If anybody would take a satellite photo in 1976 and see where that channel was, and see where those sandbars were, put it back, all the work Jeff's done will stay there. And I think what he's done is brilliant. I mean, he's put it back like it is, and they really need to protect that, to just keep that channel over on Shack.
I'll just make a comment. I was a kid then, much younger than. But there used to be a stable behind the lighthouse keeper's house, and I saw how fast it was eroding, and I was fascinated by beach change. And the pace off from the corner to the drop off for the down to the water, and it's like 170 paces. Then there was 120 paces, and then it was like 80 paces. And then it got down like 24 in a year. It was unbelievably fast. And I mean, I flew over it later with some friends, and you look down and it looked like a funnel from Arkansas on the wide end, and a point came to the base of the lighthouse. So it was funneling the outgoing tide, not the incoming tide, that was eating it up. And so when they did the dredge and they dumped the spoils, it just made this huge funnel. It was dramatic how fast you could change.
Those are great observations. And the science has finally caught up with your observations at the time. That was pretty much the conclusions that a lot of people looking at what happened over there came to. So, this is where I put so much value into what y'all see and know. The science may be there too, but and sometimes it'll catch up. But what y'all see and know and remember, it is amazing.
And it's so important to understand those observations, to document them so that when we think about the next decisions, that we're including that information and weighing it and thinking hard about those really, really important observations, which are a form of science, right? Isn't science all based on observations? Yes. Okay. So we're going to the oil house. Does anybody have any stories of the oil house? I wasn't expecting many. Right, it's an oil house. Yeah.
Amber's got a story about everything.
Okay, well then, let's go to Key Lookout Village, right? And so, Freda, where are you? I can't see anything in the dark. There you are. I want to acknowledge Freda for saying, hey, that map that you have that came from the Cultural Resource Management Plan out there for the village, I can't read it, it's flipped upside down. Because this way is north, so like all maps would be flipped this way. She's like, but I come in at Marvin's house. I don't know how else to read this map. So let's all thank Freda for having some common sense about how we should orient this map. So we made this today for you. Thank you, Freda. Yep, so right there. So a lot of people today may enter at Les and Sally's, or at least you're with the Park Service, that's where they tend to go. Anybody want to share a story about Les and Sally's?
I'm not from here, but I was the first volunteer to stay in Les and Sally's. And in August the 16th, 2016, the cabin that's not there caught on fire. I was a fireman that day. And I went out and got a hose and started putting it out. And I called the Park Service. The person I called did not know the gas had been turned on in the cabin. But he called John Riggs. John Riggs knew that. He was there in like 12 to 15 minutes. The fireboats took 45 minutes, and the pump on the first one didn't work. I didn't sleep there that night. And ever since then, that's my house, the one in the middle, because that was a traumatic experience. But the love of Les and Sally's has just grown, because when you look at the story about Les and Sally's and how it started and what went on there, it's one of the most amazing places on this island. It needs to be dredged right now too, by the way. Glen Acorn.
I knew Jim very well, but originally the first one was put there was my cousin Jelma Willis. He put just a small cabin there, and later I don't know if he was one that let him have it or what, sold it to him or give him what, but I know that he had the first house there, and then later they had made a store there and moved to that with children. That well, they were from married, probably they were still there, but they were very nice people.
I'll say something about that. I'm Brenda Nelson, Emma's daughter, but when I was like a teenager, we stayed south of Les and Sally's in a little cabin. It was called Erlin's Cabin, right in front of the Cocoa House. We would walk there and get a bottle of little Coca-Cola. When you walked in that door, you could smell that wood floor, and I still smell it today. It was special. But one more thing. I'm gonna say this to Jen. Every time I go to the cave and see that roof with them different kind of shingles on it, it's like stabbing me.
Yeah, can I say something? Sorry, I know. So,
You're out of time with it, though.
yes, ma'am. Hurricane Florence, so over time, the way the Park Service used to work, when a roof was damaged, the people come in and say, okay, you get to replace 15% of the roof or 18% of the roof. It was ridiculous. So Hurricane Florence came and Les and Sally's roof was a patchwork, and Hurricane Florence destroyed it. The whole building was flooded on the inside, and mold and stuff started growing almost instantly. You know, we had just redone that building too, only not the roof, because the only time we get money is just little pieces of it. It was a stupid way to do it. The Park Service is not doing it that way anymore. Maybe more on that problem in the future, but right now, Les and Sally's, the folks have put the value of the building less than the repair costs. And that's my problem with Les and Sally's. You'll notice I have not torn that building down yet. And it's because I do have a group that is interested in leasing it and rehabilitating it. So maybe the Park Service can't come up with the money, but maybe there's another way to do it. Still working on that. Because I don't want to see it gone. Too much history there.
Anyone else want to share a story about Les and Sally's?
They planted those, pine trees. Leslie and Sally, all those pine trees you see down that way, they planted them.
Great, thanks. Okay, with that, we are gonna go to a house that we've already heard a story about, but maybe there's some more. The Coca-Cola house. Oh, yes? I've got another.
I stayed in that a many times, but I never see bad shape now. The porch went just about all the way around it. And they had we called it a Delco that run, it wasn't electricity, but a Delco where you can have lights in there. And they didn't have they just had the vanes, but they didn't have it sealed over. And I had a mini enjoyable time there with my friends.
That's great, and Jeff can attest to this. I believe it is being worked on now, or is about to be worked on?
It's being worked on now, so that building is being rehabilitated to overnight rental standards. One of my problems with, the Cape is that so many people did have, family homes over there, and now they can't go over there and stay. So this is kind of my way of, at least at some point in time soon, now we're hoping by end of June, this and Fishing Cottage number 2 will be rehabilitated overnight rental standards, and we'll be able to rent those out to folks overnight. But it's a way to keep funds coming into the building, to keep them done. Cabins number 9 and 10 out at Great Island were destroyed during Florence, or 8 and 9. My memory's starting to fade me. But instead of rebuilding those cabins out there in Great Island, instead they gave us money for rehabilitation of some of the historic structures. We finally got it. That's what's happening.
That might not go well with local people, like written away, but we understand.
So, one of the... Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, back on another round of plans for these structures, there was a huge public agreement that they would rather structures on the Cape be available for people to come for short-term stays that everybody could afford, rather than do the leases that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars like they did have at Portsmouth, and it was all people from off. So the option for 2 nights here and 3 nights there was for the local people. And no, it'll never be the same, but that's better than somebody from somewhere they don't know where they are.
That's what I was listening to come up with that. It killed me that if we ever did get to the point where we could lease those again, somebody from Waxahachie, Texas would come in here and lease it, because they had an oil farm back up there in East Texas. And you never heard of them, and they didn't really care. They just wanted a place on the beach. We were very lucky with the Coast Guard station, because we got a local group that really cares about the place there. That's not always going to happen. So at least we'll get a couple of the places, and my dream is that we get more.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Davis, and I grew up, my grandfather was Wilson Davis, and him and my grandmother, they used to stay there during the summers. And a lot of my best memories with my dad, Billy Davis, were there. And I used to go like crabbing with him when I was about 5 or 6. And I remember we used like a scoop net and a lantern to go out there and catching crabs. And I just remember being surrounded by the sharks. It was interesting. And I've got a picture with my granddaddy with my firstborn child on that front porch there. And my dad and my granddad passed away in 2004 when I was getting ready to go to Iraq. I was in the military. And I remember the thunderstorms over there on that porch were terrifying. You hear the thunder roll. There's you can see for miles out there too. You can see the lightning. It's pretty exciting to watch the thunderstorms over there. So, what I do now, I'm retired out of the military and I got a boat and I'll go anchor in front of that house. That's about as close as I can get to the.
Can't walk to it. Way up there.
Yeah, there's a road to get to it. I lost a lot of flip-flops going through the marsh trying to get over there. We were always carrying a cooler, getting eaten up by the black flies and greenheads. A lot of good memories over there. I'd like to actually meet people or maybe get involved with helping with it. I remodel houses and I got a 4x4 truck that I drive over to Cape Lookout with and stuff. So, anyway.
There's the man to volunteer your time with, or see if he's got a job.
Yeah, if I could just spend some time, I'd like to just be able to go in there. Are the pictures still on the walls, the murals?
Yep, and they're being preserved. Now, there was one of the murals that had some termite damage behind it, but, there's the speaker. Y'all always makes me want to sing, and y'all wouldn't want to hear that, but yeah, the murals are being preserved, so they'll be there. People will be able to see them. They'll be protected behind some plexiglass, but yeah, they're still there.
I remember we used a hand pump for all the water up there.
It's gonna have water, so that's one good thing about it. It will definitely have water. You won't have to carry it, you won't have to hand pump it, it won't be surface water.
Oh, in the back here, can I just, if you're not, we have someone else. Thank you so much for sharing those really special memories.
So my granddad, Fred Brooks, and my great-granddad, Benny Brooks, and great-great-granddad, John Brooks, used to be the caretakers for the house back when the crowd from Newbern owned it. So it's called the Coca-Cola House because the people from Newbern owned the Coca-Cola branch. And so they were from Newbern, but my granddads were the caretakers of it. And when I just talked to Pa, he's 90 now, but I just kind of had a little bit interview with him, but he said when he was a youngin', they would go take the safer child fishing, and he would catch the bait for him. And he was actually in the house. This was when he was older. I think he didn't know what date it was, but it was before him and Granny got married, I think. But he was in the house. They were like fishing that morning or something, and they would use the house as a fishing camp too. And he was in the house when the water spout came and tore the porches off the house. He said it was in one of the little bedrooms, and said it got real dark.
And he thought the lightning was scary.
Yeah, so I know about some storms in that house because he was there when the porches tore off. But yeah.
Can you tell us your name too?
John Brooks.
I was over there at Hurricane Dennis. We didn't know the hurricane was coming. The Park Service helped us get off the island. But we didn't have a water spout, but I was over there during a hurricane.
Did you get off before Hurricane Dennis came?
Well, we weren't, no, it actually got pretty bad before, we couldn't get to our boat. And they hit the park ranger picked up us.
Yeah. Y'all,
They do something good once in a while.
y'all are some
That would cost
tough
more.
stock. I'm not sure I'm gonna be rented out and staying in this house. It sounds kind of scary.
Here, so I can say that.
Got moving along.
Okay.
Got a lot of it. Got a lot of
Thanks,
it.
Karen. Keep me honest, because I just want to hear everybody's stories. All right, we're at Dr. Barton's house. Dr. Barton, number 2, would you like to start sharing?
I have lots of stories, but my favorite is how we got it. My father and 2 friends found out that the house was being put up for demolition. One of his friends saw an ad in Norfolk, and it was asking for bids for destroying it or to move it. So he came back and got my dad and 2 others. They pulled up $606 together, put in the bid. The only other bid was $1, and so they got the house. Then they had to move it, and they, Newbern's famous for moving houses all over town, so they got Mr. Collins, who's moved most of them, and his granddaughter, or great-granddaughter, maybe Ashley, lives in Arkansas and trained my lab a couple of years back. But they brought over his flatbed truck and a bulldozer and jacked up the house. My father insisted that the chimney go with it. He was convinced that the chimney held the house still. And so they were able to move it with the chimney in place. Jacked it up, and he said, Mr. Collins said, it got real quiet. I looked around, and then I could see daylight under the skirt all the way around, and so I let it back down and rethought this. So it was balancing on the seventh part. There are no pylons underneath the house. It's all held up the skirt. Anyway, as they moved it down the beach, beds up and down the coast were about to fall over, just as it travels down the sand dunes. The biggest problem was the power lines between the lighthouse and the Coast Guard station. They were on the beach side. As they came up to the power lines, Mr. Collins went up to the Coast Guard and asked them permission to drop the line and cut holes on either side of the road and drive the house over and put the line back up. And Coast Guard chief said, well, that's U.S. government property. I'm not sure you can really do that or not. And Mr. Collins knew what that meant, so he went straight back to the house, shimmied the poles, took the line down, drove the house over, put the line back up, and then went back to the Coast Guard and said, because the Coast Guard's going to call them, they had a call like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so he went up to ask them what happened. And the Coast Guard went, I'm not sure what you're going to do, but they say you can't touch U.S. government property. He goes, oh my goodness, we've already done it. Why don't you do it? While we're talking, I guess. And so I learned long ago that when you deal with the government, you need to always word your question so the answer is no. Anyways, they moved it down the road and set it on the property where it is. My father got that piece of property 50 feet by 200 feet at high tide as a wedding present from his father's law partner, who had helped torn us a lot of the other lands around there in the 50s. They moved it, they won the bid in late 59, like in November, and they were told by the Coast Guard that they had until February to move it, or they'll be charged for the demolition of the house. So I can't imagine who that in the middle of winter, but that's what they did. That's great. And then I grew up, and when he got the house, it had no windows. That completely had to do everything. So I learned growing up how to make do with not much. And, it was a fun place to learn.
Thanks so much for sharing. Does anyone else have a memory of Doug Park's house? Okay, we're gonna head over to Daily Worker number 1 says. Anybody have a story about this place? A question for Jeff?
Jeff,
Yes, ma'am.
have they ever considered anything like back in the way they used to do with food among the people? If somebody needed something in their house, they timed it up like, it's what we're calling timing, when it goes with food. Why not to be able to do something like that with this activities? I mean, why not?
I don't know.
Is it worth looking into?
Maybe let's talk some more later. Maybe we'll have some ideas.
Because, about 9 months for floating around, evidently.
Yep.
Around Arkansas. Maybe something for us to look into.
Yes, ma'am. I usually say yes, ma'am, first. But we'll talk some more about that. I don't know.
Karen.
I can speak about enough, I think. I have one right. So the Jenny Worker's house never was a Jenny Worker's house.
I was wondering if you would speak up. I thought you would.
It was Thad Hussey's house. His house, he built it in the mid 1920s. He liked the Jenny Worker house, which was not a Jenny Worker house next door. That had been built by Carl Rosenkrantz. The Jenny Worker house, Thad Hussey had it, and it was passed down to eventually to the Nashers. Brent and Sylvia Nash are still living, and have lots of stories about that house and the history of it going backwards. But this was never Jenny Worker's house. Thad Hussey from Tarboro, and then the Mitchells had, which were descendants of Hussey, and then, the Nashes were, got, and the supposed Jenny Berger's house beside it was the original 1915 Joseph Holmes cottage. There's no evidence there's ever a Jenny worker in it because they had 3 girls, a wife, Carl Joseph Hands, and his visiting family. And they've never mentioned in the visitor's memoirs, there's a diary of her time there. There was no mention of any Jenny workers. And eventually it was passed down. Well, Joseph Hands went to Holderness. Mr. Holderness bought it. He lost it in a poker game to Mr. Foxhall. Foxhall gave it to Mr. Bourne. Joel Bourne, who was the environmental editor for National Geographic, spent his time there. You know Joel Bourne. And so Joel Bourne, the National Geographic environmental editor, had some of his inspiration from growing up in the cabin beside. The next cabin up.
This cabin here?
Yeah, well, yes, that's exactly. And the next cabin further up, the big one on the end is going Casablanca.
Oh.
Not on your picture.
It's not on my pictures. Yeah.
That's where it's going. But Melissa Boyd, the financial director of World Wildlife Fund, got her inspiration there too. The Cape inspired people's environmental motives for their life, people who are internationally famous for their, including famous Dr. Barton. So,
Thank you so much. Could you please share your name? Stan Wolf, thank you. Anyone else want to share a memory of either of these 2 houses that are known as the Jenny worker houses, but unfortunately never actually had any Jenny workers in it?
Real quick, my name's Judy Ensminger. I'm Emma's youngest daughter. This is the one that's real special to me because when I was like 5 or 6, I would go there with my grandparents, and they would go clamming during the day, and Grandma would sit on that porch and make rubber shoes for us to wear clamming because we would stomp in the mud. But I could see her sitting on that porch and making those. She would cut old rubber tires and sew them like a boot, and that's what we would put on our feet. And I would get behind her, and she would tie a rope around my waist to her waist, and with a bucket behind us. And whenever I see that house, which we go over there a lot, but whenever I see that house, that's what I see is my grandma sitting on that porch. Very special memory.
And it was this house or the one before it? This one. Okay, just want to make sure. How about Gordon and Ella Willis' house, or Donald and Hilda Willis?
Yeah.
Anyone want to share a memory of this house?
We keep calls, but we
Hey.
still have a memory the past few years. If we go over, take a vehicle over there, we'll go sit there on that porch, and that's where we have our picnics at. So it's pretty cool.
So you're using it today?
Yes.
Okay, Freda, yes.
I have some memories from that house. Ella and Gordon and Donald and Hilda were my aunt and uncles, and they owned that house together. And we spent many nights in that house during the summer. And in that in bedroom, see it, that window. I think about the night that we laid in the bed on our backs, looking out the window, watching the lighthouse, the light of the lighthouse just go round and round. And it was a beautiful sight. And then I think about one time that there was nothing any more exciting than the last day of school, because we knew that we were going to get a new pair of flip-flops And we knew we were gonna be ready to go to Cape Lookout. When we got home, we were gonna be packed up and ready to go we would spend weeks there, all during the summer. And that was the first house that I stayed in with my aunt and uncles there, and I had cousins, that would come and stay also. It was like two families combined. And, my aunt and uncle, my aunt Hilda, after my uncle was chief up there in Cape, he was at Cape Lookout Station. He was one of the last chiefs that served over there, and he got in an accident over there and was killed at the Cape. And after that happened, my Aunt Hilda wouldn't go back to the Cape anymore. So but my experience in staying there in that house was as a little girl. And then we moved on to the next house when you get to that one, I'll tell you some stories about that one, okay? Which was closer to the station.
I'm Fred's sister. We would go there with Aunt Hilda and Uncle Donald, and I can remember evenings after we had supper, we'd go to bed, and of course the windows were up, and I can remember them walking around with a flip pan with kerosene in it, spraying the springs. Yes. So, we're all still alive. But anyway, we had some good times over there. I remember after supper, sometimes we'd walk over to the lighthouse, and the shoals were just way out. It looked like miles of them. And but yeah, we had some good times over there.
Thanks for sharing. We heard a little bit about the mosquito patrol earlier from Fred. She also where's your little artifact?
The SWAT jar is right there. We had.
There it is on the table.
It's probably did not know what SWAT jar was, so we had to show them. So anybody needs to know, we can explain.
It's right there on that table. I was like it today. All right. The Sammy Daniels house, Lexington Station.
I remember we stayed in it.
Okay.
We stayed in this one time. It was like 2 or 3 families together. This is a huge house. And I remember the table in it, it had probably 15 or 20 chairs to it. That was the longest table I'd ever seen in my life. And we would cook, and of course all of us would, get to the table and eat, and we'd say, "How are you down there at the end of the table?" But we had a good meal in that house, and we only stayed in that house one time because my mom went to the bathroom in there and saw a snake, and she was like, "Oh, I'm not staying here anymore."
So my memory of this house is great, because what we would do is we would get to the shore and have to take all of our stuff up. And for some reason, I don't know if it was one of our older siblings, but they said this house was haunted. So me and my younger sister would always run to get past Sammy's house. And so we just, like I said, every time we go by, we were scared to death. But a funny story, Sammy, Sarah was going to stay over some, and he had got her a gun. He come right and told everybody, he said, "So she's got her a gun. If she pulls her out, don't run. My God, stand still." She might hit you if you run.
Yeah, we would get over there and have all these supplies, and I had 2 batteries, and my father-in-law, he said, "You can't leave him down there because somebody will steal him." So we get over late sometime in the evening, about dusky dark. I put them 2 batteries on there, and I started getting weak, but when I got right there by that house, I picked it up, get the pace going until I got there, because I was afraid too.
Karen, Dr. Barton wanted to add something.
I think I just know about how houses were moved. Dave Yeomans told me the story about this one where it's moved from the lighthouse. It was supposed to go down to the shore. And he said they would take a log and bury it horizontal in the road and put ropes around it, and ropes around the bottom of the house. And the house was moving with logs. And so it had a windlass, and they'd turn the windlass by hand and move the house a few feet, take the log from back and put the log in front and keep going down the road. And if you notice that house sits, the road has to kind of curve around it and go back because it's sitting in the middle of the road. When they got to that one spot, they realized the house was kind of falling apart because the rope was around the baseboard kind of on the outside. That's why it's sitting on the ground. And as it started kind of shimmying and kind of wiggling too much, they decided this is where it sits. And so it's not their land, it is that, was for a while, but the house is supposed to be down there on the shore.
Thanks. Okay, how about fishing cottage number 2? Anybody know any folks who stay at this place?
Stayed in volunteer. As a volunteer, it's one of the first places I stayed in, except for Portsmouth. And when it gets dark in the village, it's dark.
Yes.
Because no, I know, but I saw a snake come out from underneath, and I just let it walk on. They're there, and the generator would turn off at night. So at 2:30 at night, I'd have to go out to the and I got bit by a spider, and it was amazing because I didn't have to treat it, but I watched it, and it was a round thing on my neck, and it slowly went away. And I seen there's a big old spider web out there, one of those brown loose spiders on it. But it was the village, but that was a pretty good sized house. It was neat.
If that's accurate, that took a beating in 4 years. Unless they've not been backwards. Because look at 2015 and then look at 2019.
It's slated to change again. We'll let Jeff tell a story about how things changed quickly over there.
In 2015, that was still volunteer quarters, and it was getting care. When the water went bad there, and we didn't use the volunteer quarters anymore, that's what happened in a few short years. Granted, there were a couple of stores in there, but that is one of the buildings that's being rehabilitated right now. It's got a new roof on it already, and they're working on the rest of it. They'll get it done. And a central well is going to go in there so we can supply water to the other buildings out there.
Just use better paint next time.
Yes.
Sam.
Thank you. So this house was built by Dr. Luther Fulcher. The Park Service data in their historical structure report says it was built by a Coast Guardman. Dr. Fulcher was using with his youngest daughter, were at a friend's camp, and his wife went in to find a snake curled up in the bed beside the baby. She said, "We're never staying here again." And he built her a camp. He built this camp over there. Both his daughters were living and told some stories to me about this camp. But and then it went on to other ownership after they gave it up.
Thanks for sharing.
Built about
We
in
didn't have names earlier
the
today.
1950s. It was built in the early 50s.
Built in the early 50s. Okay. All
So-
right.
So when they had the hurricanes, how far did the tides come up?
Pass it to somebody who knows.
So, fishing cottage number 2, I don't know if y'all been over there lately, but it's marsh right back behind it. I mean, it gets pretty wet there. And it's Cape Village, kind of the beauty of it is it's one of the highest, most protected places over the Cape. It's one of the reasons we're putting the money into some of the structures over there and turning them into overnight quality rentals because it is so well protected. Dr. Martin's house had water all around it before, but when you get that far up in the village, there's some flooding in there, but it's freshwater flooding, so we're not seeing the tides get up that far there. Anything else? I love talking. Yeah.
I'm sure there will be more questions for you. The Cape Lookout Life Saving Station boathouse, or David Yeoman's house, without the porch, Karen and Freda were both talking about this today, and I think, were you talking about the porch too when we were sitting around? No, okay, so it was Freda and Karen. Anyone want to share a story about this house?
I would say to say one thing, my grandmama and my grandmama's and granddaddy's house was right straight across the bank. Not got it on this map, but it was right straight across the bank, and it was in 1800s.
I think it's,
Do you not got the house?
no, it was there, and it was lost after Florence, I believe. Is it after Isabel? The one that's across the street?
Yeah, so your great grandma, great grandpa's?
My grandmama, my daddy was born in, my daddy was 12 years old before Taylor moved from the Cape.
So the house is across from this, there was a small piece of it that dates back that old. And the rest of it was added on to over the years, had several different additions into it. In Florence, it was heavily damaged, and there was no way. What we were gonna try to do was demo the new part of the structure and keep the original one, but there was too much integration that had gone, so we ended up demoing.
The hill is still there.
The big hill's still there. There were machine gun emplacements up on it at one point in time.
I tell you, when I still climb that when I did that.
It's a cool thing.
Yeah, I got a picture of that.
Big pieces of granite stuff up on the top.
Yeah, okay. Karen's gonna pass it around, she's seen it.
But the pictures of that porch are on my blog. Scott Taylor, who's a photographer in Beaufort, went and spent a day with him, and they had some pictures of that before it got taken down.
Okay, so on Stan Morrill's blog, there are pictures of the porch.
I'm Chris Youngman. I interviewed David on the front porch one time, and he tells a similar story of the United States Lifesaver Service that, they said left in the middle of the road. He said they were moving this down to his property because he bought that surplus as old Coast Guard state, or the Coast Guard station was built, that was, sold, and he moved it down on his property. And he said it was so late in the day, he was so tired that instead of moving it back on the property, that he just, moved the road. So that's why the road kind of goes right down the front of it there. And, I missed the David Youngman's part of it, it's the way it is there. I understand the historical part of it. I taught history, but the David story is part of that history too.
But we sing it every time we go by there. Sing the booze.
I remember sitting on that porch, and Claire would go in there and make us pot of fudge, and he would sit on that porch and sing us the bouillon song every time we'd go. And there was many a story told on that porch, and we had a great time as families over there.
And he said that whole HCM comes, finally music.
Yes, in that kitchen with her china and that oak table. The other thing I have to add to this is I had the very high honor of taking the Bill Friday of UNC-TV to that camp to interview David. And so UNC has full footage of all the bottles, all the shells. And I remember, Mr. Friday, who is one of my heroes, along with Dave Jones too, but that's when Bob Vogel was here, and we had him in the truck.
Oh, Bob Vogel.
Here we go, you're gonna have to listen to it, buddy. And so we got through with the interview, and Mr. Friday, the gentleman that he was, we got there, and his camera crew said, well, we need to get back to the dock. I said, we're not going to the dock. We're going to the point. And so we took that truck, Park Service truck, and took Bill Friday to the point of Cape Lookout. And he just stood there and shuddered. It was so beautiful. He'd never been there before, but that was a powerful experience to have David Youngman and Bill Friday in the same space.
Thanks, Karen.
Is that the structure of David Youngman's house, or is it rebuilt?
It's the structure side of
Yeah, so this is the original life-saving boathouse, life-saving service boathouse. In the picture that's in front of that, I can't remember now. We do have lots of pictures of the house when the porch was on there, but they're not out there right now.
And wood shake shingles.
That's right. And one tree,
Yeah. Well, I really does, the grass was there in 2022.
I think the grass looks so good because they were working on this house too, right?
Yep.
What's some memories of the Guthrie Oval house?
Down from David.
Is that the one beside David?
Next to it.
Yeah.
Right next to it.
That's it.
Yeah, it's commercial. Yeah.
Yeah, I was confused about which house was Handy Glasses. I kept trying to give them a house.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's also the house that Bonnie Young Rohrer, who was born on the Cape. We have a whole collection that she did. She was born over there. Her dad was in the Army in 1942. We had that whole collection of photographs. And that's my Uncle Odell. Yeah, I still don't know how Handy Glasses got in there, but anyway, it's all good. But they were right beside David Clarenfeld, right?
Right, yes.
So this is,
Handy Glass.
okay,
Marcia Burgers confirmed it.
Yeah.
great. It was on the slide, it was off the slide, it was on the slide, it was off the slide, it was off. It's off. Yeah, we didn't know.
I couldn't tell. I mean,
It's hard. Here's the Bryant house.
That's ours.
That's your house? All right, let's hear.
We were back over here.
Yeah.
I ain't heard nobody say that about kerosene that one. You had to put on your screens. Yeah, that was the Bryant house, and it went to my wife, after her mother and father passed away. And, then we took over it. We had a lot of fun there. I went over there last spring. And, I looked in and see what I could see in there. But, we had some good fun there.
Is that the house that sits kind of way back?
Yeah, right back ahead.
I had experience that one night, but I'm not gonna tell mom about it. Don't tell me what it looks.
We had probably over 40, I say about 45, 46 years there, the family. And, of course, they enjoyed it better than I did, because I left home in 62, or 63, yeah, 62, and then got back in 94. But my wife enjoyed it, her girls, they wore out about 3 or 4 cars and trucks. Then the 4-wheelers came in. But it's in bad shape.
You got to tell them what you were doing, you just didn't leave and not come home.
Yeah.
Well, my work took me away. I really thought I'd know. I went to sea for about 31 years. But anyway, what little bit of chance I did get to use some of it, have a good time. But anyway, it's in bad shape inside. But we enjoyed it.
I'll share something. So, like you, I couldn't wait for the last day of school because I knew we were packing up and we were going to the Cape. And I'm trying not to get emotional.
It's okay.
The time that, because I grew up my whole life in there until we left. And so it wasn't about just going to the Cape. You were going to family. We were all a big family. We'd all get together and go mulleting with nets and go back and cook. Or David taught me how to pin shrimp. I mean, things that I've carried my whole entire life, I learned at the Cape. We used to go swimming on the gun mounts down in the ocean. So it's like every memory is the Cape. And so it's a precious time that we were very blessed to have in our lives. And blessed to still have the community that loves it as much as we do.
Well, it's a crazy thing. You can be here on Harper's Island, and 5 minutes you can be a million miles away.
Yeah.
Shackford Ranch to Cape.
You can.
I mean, it's like you're a million miles away. I wish I was there on that.
Connie?
The O'Boyles, he was in the Coast Guard, and he married a girl from the Promised Land, the Guthrie, and they lived over there in that house. And Phyllis Gentry, who is Phyllis O'Boyle Ballou Gentry. We have a picture of her in the archives here on the porch, laying down, with the conch shells all around the porch. And that she had in her collection pictures of their garden that had a fence around it. And it was nothing but, there were no trees. It was all sand that I can remember. And Phyllis is still alive, and I'm going to do another oral history with her. I did one already, but we'll do specifically one about the house next.
It'll be really quick. So, we had the smart people at the Historic Preservation Center come out and do a scoping on this house. What would it take to rehabilitate it? They came up with the price, $329,000. And $329,000, yeah. You know, I'm like, wait a minute, we could knock it down and build it cheaper than that. But historic preservation is expensive. So, they said, no way, we'll let it get funded. So took the historic preservation crew up there, John Riggs, David Williamson, priced it out. We came up with a price of $163,000. And they said, what? And we said, yeah, we'll do it for $163,000 with the crew here at Cape Lookout if you'll fund it. So right now, this project is ready to go. And up until a few months ago, not even that long ago, it looked like we were absolutely going to get the money to do the rehabilitation on this house. And then about 1 week ago, everything got frozen. The program manager still feels like this project will get funded. So we're really hopeful that we'll be able to move our crew there sometime this year to do the rehabilitation on the exterior of this house. So it'll be maintained. That's our dream.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeff.
So the cabin money that makes a lot of money every year, you all don't have access to that.
Yes, we do have access to that. That pays for the cabin operation.
Right.
And a little bit more, but so 20% of the cabin income goes into the rec fee program nationwide. So they take 20% right off the top. Everything else goes into supplies, equipment, labor, gasoline, propane, you name it, to actually use the cabins and keep them maintained.
The Gaspell Guthrie house, you're keeping the Nuts house. Anyone like to share a story about this house?
This held up good.
Well, we just redid this one maybe 2 years ago.
It's also in one of the highest locations out there.
Are y'all gonna like fix them all like to reenact? Is that?
That is my dream. I mean, this cabin on the inside has not been done, but exterior right now, it is. The roof's good, windows, door sidings, everything's good on it. Wouldn't take that much to do the interior on it. The problem with this cabin is where it sits, there's no water readily available right now. And y'all, we can't do surface water out there anymore. There's too much infiltration. We have to put wells in or pump.
Anyone want to share a story about this home?
Well, since nobody's
Yeah.
talking,
Karen's got the mic. She's coming to you.
I just remember Keith and Annette, which is, the parentheses there, but Miss Annette was, taught out at Smyrna, and I was teaching out there. And Julie Brown Pittman would, and I think her and Karen got together. Anyway, we'd go over there a couple of weeks out the summer and stay. And matter of fact, my wife and I were dating when we first got married. We'd go there and stay. And I tell the story, just adults in here, I tell the story in a real little tiny bedroom up front. I tried to have a younger and had to say I had it at the cave. but I think she got pregnant in September out of Williston. So anyway.
That's a cat.
In that little tiny bedroom, she couldn't run from it.
Okay, how about Carrie Gagnon, Lewis Davis house or Mary Sue Davis's house?
Yeah.
All right.
And it all revolves around food.
Yes, it does. When they were working on this project today, I was in and out of here, and they were asking me some questions about the houses and the maps and everything. And I looked at that, and I was like, Well, I thought about speaking tonight about that, and I was like, no, I can't do that. And then I was like, yes, I am, because we had some my childhood summers were spent at the Cape. Even on up to my adulthood with my children, my grandchildren never got a chance to go and be a part of the Cape. But with this renovation project going on, it is in my heart for my grandchildren to go over there and spend a weekend maybe at the Cape. Because there's nowhere else that you can go and do what you can do at the Cape. I remember a girlfriend of mine said to me, in school, she was like, well, you want to go home with me this weekend? We're going to Burlington or wherever she went. And I was like, no, I'm going to the Cape. And she was like, going to the Cape? What are you going to do over there? I said, well, we're going to go swimming, we're going to go fishing, we're going to cook fudge, we're going to go to the station, and the Coast Guard boys are up there, and they're playing pool, and we can go up there and play with the Coast Guard boys. And she was like, you can go with me, we can go shopping. I was like, no, I'm going to the Cape. Forget it. But my Aunt Mary Sue and Uncle Clark, when we started staying at that house, she cooked many a good meal in that house. And my memories there were, my uncle would get up in the morning early, and he would go to the shore, and he was looking to see if there were any mullets jumping, because he wanted to set a net, and he wanted to catch some mullets. So he would be coming to the house, coming up there, up the path, and Mary Sue would go, get up, youngins, and get your clothes on, because he's coming. You got to go help him pull that net, because he's seen a mullet jump. And sure enough, we get up, she crams breakfast in us, and we go down there and we'd haul for mullets. That's what we called it. But we would go down there, and she would sit on the beach. She would go with us, but she would sit on the beach. She said, I'm not going out there and pull that net, because you can't pull it right according to him, because you go out there and he would say, hold her up, which meant they were jumping over the net, over the court line. And he'd say, hold her up, and we'd hold her up. He'd say, hold her down, because the lead line, if you hold her up too high, the lead line's off the bottom and the mullets are going underneath. She said, you can't please him. She said, I'm not doing it anymore. She would sit up there on the shore and watch us. We did that many a time. And
She sounds like a smart lady to me.
And it would clean them right on the shore, take them right up to the house, and we'd fry them, and we'd eat a good meal. And she knew how to fix some homemade cinnamon rolls too, now let me tell you. And if there was anybody on the Cape, she'd say, go get them, tell them to come eat supper, we've got plenty. So in that little house right there, she fed a million person, I'll tell you right now, and it was some good cooking.
Fred and Mandy Gutmore family, I've seen a YouTube video when y'all were little, tiny, everybody packing up, and y'all went home about that.
Yeah, we talked about that today.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
And I was the one that was toting that slop jar right
Yeah.
now.
We heard about you.
Yeah.
I take it back and forth.
You can see how much they would have to drag.
It was a far walk.
It's on YouTube, look it up.
Yeah.
And Mary Sue, after they would cook, they'd send me and Faye. She was smaller than me, to the hills to take sand to go in them cast iron skillets and clean them. Yeah, and then right past the woods right beside it, there was the hills where the guns were, and we would go into the guns, and we'd eat a mini ration that we dug up, blueberry cobblers and stuff like that we could take back. The guns were out, and you could go and see where they had sketched on the side, you know, their names and stuff, but it was an experience.
Mary Sue's the legend of Harper's Zone.
Yeah.
And the guns now, if nobody knows, the gun mounts are out into the ocean.
80 yards.
They were right behind that house in the sand dunes, and now the gun mounts are in the ocean.
I have a PS. Poor Clark didn't do much right for Mary Sue wherever he was, because she gave him a hard time, but he earned it.
Yeah. All right, how about the Coast Guard station? Some stories about
I
this
want to
area?
know if the pool table is still up there in that.
Yes, it is. Pool table is still there.
The pool tables in this building? Yeah.
So my story about that is my very first time to go up over there. I looked around that, they're in the maintenance shop, and I'm upstairs, the old enlisted, break area, and I looked at that pool table, and I said, well, gentlemen, I know where my office is gonna be.
You ever played pool up there with the many of coast guard guys? Do anything, we go up there and play pool.
They let you do anything you wanted to?
Biggest table I've ever seen in my life.
It's cool, but it's still up there.
Okay, we're gonna direct attention to the back here.
But for us also, Josiah Bailey's cousin's son, right?
Right.
Okay, and if you'll tell them what's happening with the Coast Guard station, that'd be a good thing.
Well, but first, I need to tell you that Jess really hadn't told me exactly. I've heard that when he retires, it's going to be the Jeff West Pool Bar and Grill.
The dream is always the same.
And on Thursday night is bingo. So I just wanted to let you know he'll be.
Who's in charge of the bingo game?
Yes, we'll have all that going. He's the man. We'll go to see him. I'm sure he'll take a credit card and be ready to go. Karen asked me to speak about the Coast Guard station and the galley. In the last year, we formed a 501c3, and we've gotten a 20-year lease from the Park Service on the Coast Guard station, and we're in the process of rehabbing it completely and turning it back into what we want to be an environmental field station education program, and particularly for a lot of the young people down east. There's so much down east history that's not getting out, and that's one of the things that we want to work on. And so there's a lot of the roof, one of the hurricanes leaked, and the plaster, we've taken all the plaster out because it had lead on it. We took 30,000 pounds of lead tank plaster out and took it on to Hibbs Road in 1 weekend. We've really gotten a lot going. We're putting upstairs, for those of you who've been in there, we're putting a bathroom in each room upstairs because my wife made it clear that she wasn't going to go to a gang bathroom. And we are powering it. We're going to put it back with solar and generator is how we're going to put it back together again. But Gary Brown, who ran the Camp Seagull Outpost in Morehead City for 25 years, is going to be our program manager for that. And so it's evolving here. We'll probably have the galley ready by summer. The station, well, it's on Cape Lookout, as you already know. It's hard to put a schedule on that. But after the meeting, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions they have about it. But we're very excited about it. We believe we will now be able to make it available to the public, and particularly from educational point of views.
Like the Corsound Waterfowl Museum.
Like the Corsound Waterfowl Museum and the Jeff West Bar Grill, and we have it all set up. But anyway, that's where we're going on this, and it's kind of labor of love for us. We've been at it. I mean, I've got so many stories out there for the Coast Guard, and then of course the Coast Guard people that are down east have got stories they can tell about hurricanes and rescues. There's just so much history that we lost if we don't start keep capturing, just like we're doing here tonight. So I'm very happy that I'm involved in this project, and if anybody has any questions or criticism or anything, I'm always open. So thank you.
Thanks, Bud. Thanks for sharing and providing some hope for the Cape. I think at this point, I know we've been sharing a bunch of stories and telling some really important memories, and I really appreciate y'all sharing these and that we're getting them documented. But I just want to talk a little bit about what's happening now, and then talk a little bit about your thoughts about the future. So Jeff, I'm going to talk about this slide.
Well, it'd be easy to talk about that slide, because it doesn't cover nearly everything, so.
That's why we made it like that.
To keep me quiet and short? Oh, my. So so this is the George Dixon House at Portsmouth. And if any of y'all remember what happened with that with, Isabel, when it was leaning toward Shreveport and the porches were ripped off and stuff, and everybody said tear it down. And yeah, I'm going to mention his name. Huh? Yeah, no, I'm talking older. Isabel. Yeah, Bob Vogel said, Bob Vogel, I mean, he keeps coming up. Bob Vogel said, no, we're going to save it. And they did. And then Hurricane Dorian came along many years later, 2019. And the day after the hurricane, Ricky Daniels and I went over there. And I don't even know how to communicate what it felt like to go out to Portsmouth. We had put tons of work into Portsmouth before Dorian, blood, sweat, and tears, and there was every single structure was damaged over there, every single one of them. And some of them were destroyed, some of them were heavily damaged. You heard Karen earlier, the smart people, the engineers came in and said, yeah, there's 9 structures here not recoverable. You're just gonna have to take them down. And, I'm really lucky because I've got Riggs and I've got Ricky Daniels that have been working here since the 80s. And they said, well, Jeff, I don't know, I think we can rebuild those. It's like the $6 million man. But by golly, they did. So you can't even tell it in this picture here. But I mean, this building is completely gutted on the inside. It was leaning way past Shreveport this time. The porches were gone, ripped off and everything.
Is that the school?
No, this is the George Dixon House. If you go around, it's the next house if you're headed towards the church after the post office. Those aren't real windows. Ricky Daniels, an artist, from any distance at all, you look at them, they look like real windows. You get up close, that's plywood. Yeah, exactly. But it was an inexpensive way to protect the house. And really, most people never realize they're not windows. Eventually we'll put windows back in it, but this house is an example of what we can do to keep that cultural tapestry in place. If you lose the house, you look out there and you just have an empty field where the house used to be. But if you can keep the structure there, even if it's not whole, you can still see a piece of how people lived. And you can explore that history then. So that is part of the goal there at Portsmouth. Now we're adapting the structures to what we know is happening. There, Portsmouth, y'all, is sinking. Same time the sea level's coming up. I don't care what reason is, doesn't matter. I do not care. What I know is reality. And since I have been here, the changes out there have been dramatic. When I went there, we had about 900 more trees out there than we do today. Not because we willy-nilly decided we needed firewood. What happened is those cedar trees died. They just flat died, and we had to cut them down. We were falling on the houses. And if you go out there today, it's dramatically different. And the pictures from the 70s, when we first went in there and actually had to cut our way to some of the structures that were there, I mean, dramatic change, it is there. So what do we do to keep those up? We got to come up with ways we can manage in a way that works with nature, doesn't fight it, because we're losing. If we say, hey, we don't care about the water level coming up out there, we don't modify the structures, we're going to have the same thing happen that happened in Dorian. Houses filled up with water. If you were an old Portsmouth person, you'd say, yep, happened before. Well, when the water came down on the outside of the buildings very quickly, the inside of the building still had a lot of water in it. That's a lot of pressure. Blew out waters, blew out walls, blew out floors. It was awful. Anyway, so some of the buildings, we put trap doors back in like they used to do in the old days. And some of them don't have any floors at all, like this particular house. Actually, it has some floor in it because we're storing some wood and stuff in that. But Coca-Cola house, back down here at the Cape. So the big problem with a historic structure, the big problem with a house is it costs money to maintain. I don't care if it's historic or not. You add the word historic to it, and you can just triple the price. Whatever you got, one nail that costs $1, it's now going to cost you $3. I don't know why, but that's just the rule. You know, it just goes up dramatically. So we got a bunch of historic structures out there. If you do not have an income coming in, then we have to count on project money. We have to apply for project money. We get project money for a structure about every 10 to 15 years. You cannot maintain a structure that way. What you can do is every 15 years you go back in and rebuild it. That's a stupid way to spend money. So if I maintain a building, it costs me, X amount of money a year. Let's say $4,000, $5,000 a year for maintenance. If I have to rebuild it and I have to wait 15 years out on the Cape, I'm rebuilding it. Now we're talking about $700,000. So that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So we're trying to get to the point where we maintain these structures. We can do that if we've got income. We can do that if it's a living structure, if we've got people in it. So Coca-Cola House, that's one of the houses that we're rehabilitating the overnight standards. It's going to get water from the central supply that's over at the lighthouse. I suspect that structure will stay leased out all the time. And I think that there will be a lot of local folks, I hope, that do exactly what Fruze that you was talking about taking kids over there so they get a chance to have those experiences. That's what I want to see happen. That brings it alive. Who amongst us can really go home to that childhood you had? You can't. It's gone. You got it in your memory, though. You can remember those things so it stays alive. If you can give a little bit of life to the young people by sharing some of those things, so memories that they will always have. So that's one of the things we want to do. Coast Guard Station is another great example. So we looked at that and what to do over there. And long term, I've settled on pretty quickly time. I'm running out of time. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at you on purpose because I knew that. Long term, that building costs a lot more. Oh, right, I'm getting the lights now. She hadn't turned them off. She starts flipping them. So long term, that structure does cost a lot of money to maintain. Well, how are we going to do that? I know I'm not going to get it. We had a project in for that house. It was almost $1 million to do what the 501c3, the Cape Lookout Foundation, is doing. And they're doing a great job on it. They are keeping us appraised of everything. They're painting within the lines, even though they'd like to paint outside them a little bit. And they're right about it. Yeah. Anyway, what we're going to have is a maintained structure over there that's going to have a use, and it has more. It's not like it's going to be a use for the people in Waxahachie, Texas. It's going to be a use for kids and people from this area. Bringing in groups in there to teach them about fishing and hunting and shelling and the history and culture of the place. So when I look at the place over there, I think about how can I possibly maintain these structures so that they're still there as a part of your heritage and memories and lives and still pay for them. Yes, sir?
So is it going to be people in the community going to get first dibs to rent it, or just the people?
Nope, it'll be open. I can't do that. I wish I could. Yep.
We guys spend 2 weeks a year over there. We ride our side by side on the corridors. We got 100 miles every time we're over there.
Hoorah.
And we walk woods and marsh. And it says in a lot of these houses, And I got some pictures to share of the Coca-Cola house. And stuff, and they had it all opened up.
Well, that's great.
But, anyway, it's hard for us to get captains, like, she could book our next year. But anyway, usually in January, she starts booking everything, and go to fall and spring.
One of our dreams is that we get those on a different rotation for rentals. They're working on that at rec.gov now to come up with a 6-month rotation so that we're not just open them once a year all of a sudden. And that way, maybe we can get a little easier way to lease those things. But adding more buildings to that inventory is going to help with that too.
How about this? That's when we first going to put it online, right?
Yep.
Why don't you work out a deal with local plumbers? You're not gonna do it like electrical or anything. The plumbers, siding guys, roofing guys, say, look, when you get your crew from here, we'll give you guys a week to stay, but this has gotta get done.
So this is a contract job, and DOT Construction out of Beaufort did get it, and they are using all local contractors, subcontractors and stuff. But this is one that was beyond things for us to just like try to piecemeal. That's a, if you're doing some rehab to one of the structures over there, pretty easy thing to do. And we could get a ton of local support that way. And over at the Coast Guard station, those guys are using local contractors for the most part. I think the plumbers were right here on Parker's Island, same guy that did my house. Dean, yeah. Some of you are saying, yeah, is Dean's doing it? No. Is Dean here? He's bigger than me. Now, that is one of the goals too, but on the contract jobs, those are open bid. I don't have any say over there. I was very happy that DOT got it. They have done great work for us before, and most of the folks that work for our local subs. Okay, I've said nothing. They're gonna take this one. Yes, ma'am. You know what? I am gonna be here after this, and Erin's about to hurt me. You're not.
I'm not a violent individual.
Erin will hurt me.
There you go.
But I'll be here.
So really what we want, just a little bit to end with some of this discussion. You've gone back to the Cape, you've been thinking about it, you hear what's happening now. We do know more storms are coming, right? They've always come. So what do we do next? Like, how do we start thinking about what the right plan is when a storm comes? And so when does the village no longer become a village? And sometimes it's easier to think about a different village, like Portsmouth Village, if the church wasn't there. How many of you feel connected enough to Portsmouth Village that you could think about the church not being there? It'd be strange, right? Right, and so Wade Shore Cemetery was on Shackelford Banks. Would you still feel connected? There's a no, I see a no. So at what point would the Cape start losing the connections to you and your family? So understanding this is really important because you look at the map that you have, right? There's a collection of buildings. There's 4 stars that demonstrate some of the buildings have been lost already. And when others are on that verge, on that brink, is this a good strategy to think about? Or is it putting a lot of money into the ones that are most special, that hold the spirit of the Cape Village? Is that the right strategy? So we'd just like to hear a little bit from y'all, what you're thinking.
They're all just as important as any of them.
So if you were out there.
One building over there is special.
Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Not really.
Okay. I'll give you the mic in case you feel it's fine.
My name is Michael Jordan. I've been running the ferry to Don Morrison since 1978. So I got a little bit of time to Portsmouth. And I don't think
You ever played basketball?
No, I can't jump. I can't jump. I can run the heck out of a ferry. I can run it right around just as fast as anybody. None of those buildings, to each individual, they're special. But as a group, they're not. It takes the whole village to be able to have a village. No different than it takes a village to raise your kids. I mean, it's the same way at our house. I raise my grandkids. So I don't think there's any way you can say, well, let's just tear this one down. That was the Willis house. We didn't care about that. I think they're all just as important as any of them. Keep the heritage and stuff that's there.
But so is the compromise of the shell building, like they do at Portsmouth, is that a better option than tearing it down? And does everybody understand that sometimes compromise is the only option?
Well, it's a very neglected park. It's one of the smallest, it's a very small park in the national park system. And they don't get the amount of money that it takes to maintain it. That's the ultimate goal. It's always been that way. I came here, I was a transplant. I was born and raised on a 10,000 acre wheat farm in Washington State. I got stationed in Cherry Point in 1976. And I've been here ever since. So I've seen a whole lot of different stuff. I used to go over there and play in gun mounts. I mean, it's just what we did. Go over there and mess around. And then they moved offshore a little ways and then we went out there gigging around them. Found them on the way around.
Adaptation.
You'll do that now.
But I don't think you can really say, you know, well, just because it's a shell of a house, that it should, there's nothing there. There was something there for all the people. It's not just one family or the other. It's the whole community. Now we've been invaded so much down here by people like me that the population's been diluted big time. I lived in Broad Creek when I got stationed here. And I used to drive from my house to Broad Creek to Don Morris's, and I'd pass 2 or 3 cars going down there, go kicking clams in the wintertime. And now you got bumper traffic, you can't even get out of both. So it's not, you're not going to stop it. But if them people want to come down here and live down here, they need to support some of this stuff.
I've been singing that song for a long time.
They don't need to build a $5 million house on the front of Harper's Island just so they can sit there and look at the water. They need to put a little bit of money in the other stuff too.
But the conversation, I think, is the whole village. And to me, that's saying a shell is better than it being going like the 4 that are going, right? So, I mean, I go to Portsmouth a lot. Connie Mason introduced me to Portsmouth, 30, 40 years ago. And it's the place you can't, with the exception of the church, because the church is sacred. And I would say the Cape, the lighthouse is sacred. I mean, those are the symbols of those 2 communities. But I'm walking in, unless you knew George Dixon House is still there, at least you know where he was. It's almost like it's at least a grave marker. It's at least a marker of what was. So, yeah, I would encourage people to think about that because the storm is. Jim, what was the number that was supposed to be what it would take to repair Portsmouth, and how much money did you get? Tell me that.
Big difference, a little over $9 million to repair all the damage in Portsmouth. And today, so the initial response, we got about $300,000. That was the initial rehab, stabilization, cleanup of Portsmouth. And since then, we've gotten $280,000. That's it.
$600,000 for $9 million damage, right?
Exactly.
That kind of leads me into what I was going to say earlier, is that when you still go to Portsmouth, even though there's no floor in the Dixon house, you go by and you look, and even though that's plywood, it looks like it did, and it looks like Portsmouth. I think the Cape Village would be the same way. If there's a house damaged and the exterior is fixed where it looks like it's supposed to, then it's still a Cape. You might not be able to go in there and see all the fine china and stuff that used to be in there and all the clock scales, but that would be the thing. There's also the other houses, and this is the other part of it, the houses that, and I think I heard you, at least the 80%, you are making money on like the houses over the hours. And so the houses that you're going to repair, I mean, they're going to hopefully pay for themselves.
That's the dream.
So there's a few houses that, you know, Fred can take her grandkids over and stay maybe at Mary Sue's and talk to them about how if Mary Sue's house is one of those possibilities. So the houses that you can repair to that stage, great, and they can pay for themselves. The other ones, I mean, if it's just a shell there, I still think it's important enough, even if they're damaged in a hurricane, to at least have
I want to say that I agree with Chris that I know it's terrible, isn't it? But to have the outside shell not only gives you the visual layout of a village, it also inspires the stories that go along with the people. And I think that touchstone is so important to have that, to tell the story of the village.
It goes back to what Chris said, or was it Corey, at the Wade Shore Cemetery at the Diamond City Homecoming this year, that people die twice. They die when their body dies, and then they die when nobody ever calls their name. Well, and somebody said that it hit me, but geez, that's what it was. But at least that they're talking about George Dixon now. He's still on Portsmouth because it's the shell of his house. And Chris and I, we look at each other every time we get dragged around a youngins by David's camp. And they don't know, they don't have a clue what we're talking about, but it helps me and him to sing the Blue Shot because it's still David's camp. You can call it both houses if you want to. So that's kind of where we have to understand it. Because I think you've heard tonight, Mr. Park Service, and Dr. Erin, that these places are more than buildings.
This means a lot because, y'all, I mean, when we have something happen over there, and I get this tiny pot of money to fix everything, it is a struggle with how do you do that and actually still answer the needs of folks? How do you do that? So, my desire and my hope and my dream is that we rehabilitate everything. That's not going to be the reality of it. I can strive for that and will strive for that because it's the right thing to do. But this is the kind of stuff I need to hear.
Do they still do the mule train down into the village and all that? Well, yeah, the structure needs to be there, so whoever's on that.
In other words, don't worry about the inside, worry about that.
So that, if you're gonna rent some of them, repair them a little bit at a time and win them out.
Is it still hurting your Casablanca?
The Casablanca killed me, y'all. When I came here in 2011 for the Hurricane Irene response, it was still repairable. And it by,
That's one of the places that I used to play Casablanca.
everybody seems like had a story about.
Yeah. Overflow in the yard, and we would go swimming, and the lady that owned the house would let us say, "We're not here, you can still go down." We'd wash off, and it had no sulfur in it. There'd be like I said, the ground was yellow from sulfur, but it just continued. We'd wash off it like that time again. But she was very nice lady.
Look how long she's been for all that.
Yeah. Look, she would not get well water, city water on Harper's Island. She's running out all well water for 90.
I got a 360 deep well. I'm trying to see what four rocks in it.
See, I still drink County Garden.
All need to go garden.
You're full of mic.
So, what goes into making them a shell of a house? Are we just focusing on the outside, or
there's no floor.
So if we make them all shells of the house, are we ripping out the floors of all of them, or are we just focusing on the outside, the floor goes, it goes, or?
Fair question. So it depends on the house and where it is, and also what the damage to the house was. Many of these houses.
Resort option.
Yeah, it is a last resort option, but some of these houses out here at Portsmouth, the floor is gone anyway. And when we look at the damage and how it occurred and why it occurred, and discovered that there had been two significant rises in the level of water, Oh, great, I got it again. Two significant flooding events out there during Hurricane Dorian, and that much of the damage was caused by that water either pushing up against the floor or not being able to exit the building when the water on the outside came down. We were able to make some judgments about things. And once again, how much money we had to go into. So some structures that were heavily damaged, could we shore up the shell fairly inexpensively? Whereas some of the bigger, more important structures that weren't damaged quite as badly, but still needed a lot of money, maybe we should put the money into those, like, the schoolhouse, heavily damaged. The church, fairly significantly damaged. So, we just had to make those kinds of calls. So if I had a few houses that were going to cost me, $20,000 to rehabilitate the shell, and then some that I could put, more money into because they were more significant. And y'all, it is a gut-wrenching call that you make as things are developing out there, and it's not easy. And I don't just like go out there and say, I think today I feel like this structure is more important than anything else. I mean, we talk about these things, and I do have some great people, and they are from that area. They've worked out there, and they have great judgment on what we can and can't do. Right now, Thursday, I'm going to go out to the Wallace House at Portsmouth and look at it. And the historic preservation crew has begun the rehabilitation out there. And they called me and they said, Jeff, you need to look at this. We got more damage than we thought we had. So the Wallace House is a pier beam construction. And yeah, she's about to cut me off again. And it's got significant termite damage in it. So we got to take a look at that.
Please tell me this isn't a question for Jeff.
No, I'm on your side. Listen, I'd like to tell you an experience that I had that was a gift, an emotional gift to me to reinforce what Connie said. Bunko Shield from Wilmington is an 82-year-old. He's the grandson of Joseph Himes, who built this penny workers house. Has never been to the Cape. And Jeff arranged for a ranger and vehicles, and the ranger and I took his and the grandchildren over and took them and showed them the structures. And we pulled together all the photographs and all the history that I've been doing this for 3.5 years. Connie's been doing this, well, I won't say how many years. 72 years. Yeah. But we've heard, I've been listening to the stories, and I'm from north of Winston-Salem. I've been listening to the stories y'all told me for 3.5 years and trying to record them together, photographs. And it was such a blessing to go with him, and he had trouble getting around. He got to see the structures, hear the stories of the structures, and he had never been there in his life. And he had sat on the knee of Carl Joseph. So the people who have connections to structures, the structures are touchstones. And the stories that this museum preserves, and the stories that you have, I don't know how many interviews, everywhere I go, I find things where you've interviewed somebody, documented history. The buildings are, I don't think, half as important without the story as if we could have the story with it. And so continuing to build the story here, me pulling together what I can, Connie doing what she does, but also the Park Service now is developing, if I understand it right, Serena is getting ready to start a walking tour. You can walk through the village with your phone, go to it'll read your GPS, tell you the structure, and tell you the story of that structure. We need to make sure the stories are connected to the structures as we go through. I'm not. No question.
We need a GoFundMe for the Park Service.
But anyway,
I actually don't disagree because, conducting oral histories, creating a tour like that maybe at some point can have some, virtual reality to appeal to the young generation too, where if you can't get over there one day because the dog's damaged, you can still learn about the place. And that costs money. And those investments in the oral history, in the stories of the place, of high-tech experiences so that you can experience what it once may have been like, that costs money just as rehabbing building does. And there's a trade-off there. Do you put the money in the building? Do you put the money to the development of these stories and to document the stories and to make sure that the stories are actually told and told in ways that people will either read about them, listen to the stories, watch a video, put on a VR set, which I've only done once. They're very disorienting for me, so that's not my future. But maybe there's a lot of kids out there that it's your grandkids, it's their future. And we've got to make those decisions too. And so that's also really important for us to be able to document how important those stories are, because there has to be funding for that as well. Karen?
I wonder if they haven't left them to the families, if they would still be kept up.
We can't go there, Brenda. We were just talking about that. That's 50 years ago. Yeah. So
we have to think about what the future can be. You have something you'd like to add?
I just got a quick question. From the standpoint of where we're at and to move forward, what does the Park Service need from the community standpoint of this?
That's not my question to answer. I'm more of a facilitator of this conversation. So unfortunately, for some of us, our hands might each other. Because I think that's I'm giving it to you again.
and this will be the benediction.
So, what's important to me at this point is to understand exactly what Erin's trying to get at here. How are these structures important to you, and what do you want us to do with them? What if the structure you love the most is heavily damaged? What if we know that by 2045 at Portsmouth, you're going to be wading through water up to your, middle of your thighs 80% of the time to get to those buildings? What do you want us to do with them?
What can you go about getting the money to do this?
Well, the money is a whole different world, right? And at least as long as I'm around, I will worry about that, and I will do my best to make it happen. I won't ever get enough money. I will never, ever get enough money to do everything we should do the way it should be done, but I will make everything happen as best I can. So, but what I need to know from y'all is, what measures do you want me to take? We could raise buildings, for instance. Yes, ma'am.
What is a way to go about picking the most structurally sound building and getting them completely concentrate on those? What he wants to do. And get them ready to rent out and let that generate some money to fix the other ones.
And I think that's the plan, what they're trying to do, as well as the ones that are feasible to get water to is also going to be really important, as well as dealing with septic, right? So those are considerations that Jeff has been having to make when selecting some of those buildings. One of the concerns that I've heard before about selecting buildings that are most structurally sound means that you're just investing in the past person's decision, and not necessarily the decision of the community. And so that's the information that we want to know about, like where, sure, there's some feasibility stuff, but even within that, there's still choices that need to be made. And those choices in what I'm trying to facilitate here is, and what Jeff wants to know is, what do you value? What will hold the spirit of this place as strongly as possible for you? Because who knows what the next hurricane season is going to bring. And so then when that hurricane comes, then what is the right strategy too?
It's a hard question even for y'all, isn't it?
Do the best you can with all,
Yeah, it's Mother Nature, you just have to deal with it.
I think conserving most of it in whatever way that looks is the best way to move forward.
You got income on a house and you're able to maintain insurance on it?
We can't, we're federal government, we can't insure, or self-insured, which basically means taxpayers are paying for it.
But when you give the money for them camps to the Cape, isn't the government gonna take more of that too?
They're gonna take 20% of it, but that leaves me 80%. And you know what? That's 80% that I did not have. That will pay for a lot. And here is my suspicion right now, part of why I really like this concept, is that that's gonna pay for more than just that building. I can take just a little bit off of both those buildings once they start renting out, and I can apply them to another building to get it up to
You're gonna
standards.
do the Mike McGee way.
Hey, listen, Mike McGee is one of my heroes.
Mike McGee is what made Bob Douglas so good.
Life Saving Station, y'all, that building has great bones. It looks bad. But it has great bones, and we do have, that's another one that has a project in on it. I know it means lots of folks over there. But, this is, I could have tried to jump on this with both feet and yell and scream, that would have never worked. But we're taking little bites of this and we're trying to do it the right way. I'm not gonna get it all right, but I do need y'all's help with this. Cause if I invest the money in the wrong thing, all y'all are gonna do is come at me and say, stupid Park Service people, you've done it again. If only Bob Vogel was here.
So 20 years ago, when the Park Service took over, what was your future thoughts for these?
This
Really,
50 years ago, thereabouts. Yeah, I know you keep giving it, taking it away from me, and then you give it back. So, when the park was established was different from when we took over in 1972. The first superintendent and secretary were here. And then in 1976, we actually started doing things over there. But the important question was, what was our view? Near as I can tell from most of the management documents, they were making some good judgments and trying to do the right thing with the tools they had at the time and the knowledge they had. One of the mistakes that I think that was made was that we did not engage the community in the right way and measure the importance of what we were doing based on what the community. Now, the Park Service will stand up and tell you and say, we have a world community. Because we do. We get visitors from all over the world, right? But I got news for everybody. I mean, our most powerful constituents, the most powerful people who can support us or destroy us are the ones in the local community. And I mean, the place over there, I'm just listening to what you're saying and the way you're saying it. I mean, this was about life and living your families and your heritage. And now Erin's just walking away. She's leaving. So it's that important. And so we've got to take that into consideration. The hard piece, though, for y'all is really making that call, right? So, the Coca-Cola house, you betcha, and it's happening. Even as we're speaking, that's happening. And the Barton House, that's in the works. But what happens if the next hurricane that comes through heavily damages the Barton House? It's going to take $700,000 to fix it, or I can take some of that money and spread it around to other buildings. What do you want me to do?
We'll talk about that.
Well, and here's the problem. I am not going to always be here. And right now, if I can come up with a plan, and with Erin's help, that's what we're trying to do, is develop a pattern, not only for this park, but for other parks, also to take a look at the community's concern and how to document it, quantify it, and what it means when the rubber meets the road. And it's hard. It is hard.
And the critical thing is that after every storm, your priorities probably change too, right? Because you see the impact of what that looks like. and that can change your preferences. And so one of the things that the reporting that I do documents that just because we're collecting opinions today, February, not December, December. February 11th, 2025, doesn't mean that in October, that a storm has come, that what you're saying tonight is gonna completely ring true, right? That is another moment where you come in and you say, hey, this is what you said before. Do we still feel this way before we start making those decisions? And that's really critical too. I know, you've always had them too.
Best thing to do.
All right, so wrapping this up.
Thanks, Karen.
Yes. I got to put a chair at the table, so if you're under the age of 50, get put a table and chair. But I will say this, I will say this,
Under 50.
I am hopeful that the role, of course, the Waterfowl Museum has played in this whole process from the beginning has helped prepare and elevate the local voices from the beginning. And we've worked a long way to get it to this, and this will not be the end of it. We'll keep talking. We'll keep, the need for oral histories is very real. And we've got an archive full of people talking about the Cape and Diamond City and all that. So I think this has been a really positive conversation, and I hope it's what Jeff and Erin wanted, because the people here do care, and they're going to care next week, and they're going to care after the next storm. So thank you for letting us be heard.
Well, and thank you for trusting me enough to invite me in the room with all of you, and for all of you to bear with me through this. I have to say, Karen is like, you're an academic, you're asking the wrong questions. You need to ask the questions this way. And without her as a partner for me, there's no way that I could do my job effectively, which means that the Park Service would never hear the right opinions, because I wouldn't be asking the right questions, right? The way that I say it is all stuck in theory, and it's all stuffy, and I'm thinking about methods, right? But she's like, no, these are human beings. Let's make sure we ask the right questions and in the right way. And that will enable Jeff and whoever comes behind him, hopefully, to make the decisions that and protect what you value out of the Cape. So thank you, Karen. Thank you.
If we're not done, we'll keep talking about this.
And anybody who would like to help fold tables and chairs, I am open.